You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma podcast. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode. Excited to share this episode with you today. But before we do, I've got to thank our sponsors. First of all, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. They've been a huge part of this podcast for the last few years. So the Oklahoma Hall of Fame have been sharing Oklahoma's story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com. And for daily updates, go to oklahomahof on Instagram and give them a follow. Our other sponsor today is Chickasaw Nation. Now, the Chickasaw Nation have sponsored pretty much everything in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and it's an honor to have their name and their brand supporting this podcast. So a huge shout out to Governor Anatoby for supporting this podcast. It really means a lot. Our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. This episode is presented by the Choctaw Nation. The Choctaw people have a rich history and a bright future. At the Choctaw Cultural Center, you can take part in a story 14,000 years in the making. Stroll through our immersive exhibits portraying Choctaw life from the moment our ancestors emerged from the Nani Weha in Mississippian homelands to the Trail of Tears, where we lost so many loved ones, and finally to the modern-day tribe making a positive impact on local communities throughout southeastern Oklahoma. Try your hand at our social dancing and stickball and learn more about our vibrant culture through demonstrations, workshops, and classes. The kids will have a blast in our Luxie Activity Center. The Choctaw Cultural Center is more than a museum. It's a living, breathing experience. Visit choctawculturalcenter.com to plan your visit. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, host, back with another episode down at the Oklahoma Hall of Fame today. Today we're going to talk about the modern frontier, and that is Oklahoma City. So please welcome my guest, Lindsay Vidrine, who is the Senior VP of Destination Marketing at Visit OKC, which, like you just said before we started recording, is a bit of a mouthful, but sounds like a pretty cool job when you think destination marketing.
It is. I have to admit, it's a pretty fun gig.
Yeah. And I'm sure and then the end part is at Oklahoma City, and everyone's like, why would you want to go to Oklahoma City? Unless you live here, and then you know why. Everyone listening probably knows that, unless you're from Tulsa, and you should leave Tulsa and come down here. But that's about as much as I'll say on Oklahoma City versus Tulsa, because I know there's a lot of people who are for and against.
Well, I'm neutral. There's a lot of things to love about Tulsa, a lot of things to love about Oklahoma City.
I do love Tulsa. Great golf courses in Tulsa. But yeah, so you know, usual kind of format of the podcast, as you've listened to some of your mutual friends have been on the podcast, you know, who you are, what you do, why you do it. Before we dive into the destination marketing side of things, tell me about you. Did you grow up here?
I did, okay. Yes. Born here, born in Oklahoma City, grew up between Oklahoma City and Edmond, and then went to OU. And classic kind of boomerang story. Did a couple internships while I was in college, one in San Antonio, one in St. Louis, and ended up getting a job at a big international PR agency in St. Louis right out of school. And so took me away. But it just wasn't home. Lots of things I loved about St. Louis. It was a great kind of moment in my life. First career, bought my first house there, got married there, you know, all these wonderful kind of firsts you go through as an adult. And but then ready to kind of move on and looking around. And my husband, he's from Houston originally. We had met at OU, and he was like, hey, while you're looking, you know, look back in Oklahoma. He missed it, and I missed it, and that's what brought us back here. We both got jobs and came back. So growing up in Edmond, obviously Edmond's a lot different probably to what it was when you grew up, right? Yes.
For the better. It's great. There's a lot of cool things happening and some great developments coming, and the Lark is coming, and you know, Matthew Myers is doing some epic things up there, as well as great restaurants. And Citizens Bank is awesome up there too. That's where I bank. I love going up there. And Round Midnight. Have you been to Round Midnight Jazz Bar?
I have not.
Yeah. Good spot. Another friend, Noah, who's doing some jazz things there, and not a huge jazz fan myself, but when you listen to it in the right setting, it sounds, music fits the room. What did you want to do when you grew up? Like, what kind of drew you to OU?
So I originally was on a totally different path of environmental science, and I had a couple of classes and a teacher in high school. I went to Edmond Memorial for high school, and really just fell in love with science and environmental science in particular. Went to OU and decided very quickly, it was part of the engineering program there at the time, and I did not want to be an engineer. Too much math, too much structure. And so it was just kind of taking some electives to figure out what's next. I've always loved to write, and I took an intro to mass comm class, and just was like, this is so easy. These are all, things that come naturally to me. And so switched over to the journalism and PR path, and still minored in environmental science, but really just kind of fell in love with storytelling and PR and journalism. And my internships were on the PR side, but I was working for environmental clients and healthcare clients. So I kind of still got to use that science background and that love, but really more through marketing and simplifying these really complex issues, and trying to simplify communications for healthcare brands, environmental issues, that kind of stuff.
So why the science early on?
I think it was just part of, I'm naturally very curious, and I think there's a lot of different parts of science that kind of feed that. I love being outdoors, and so there's a whole part of biology and nature and the love of outdoors that ties in with that. And so, I had a grandmother that was a science teacher and then a principal, and she would do science experiments with us when she kept us over the summer, so it kind of just came from a lot of different places, I think.
Yeah, that's really cool. A lot of people probably listen to environmental science and think tree hugger straight away, right?
Sure,
which is not what you're doing, but talking about your grandmother like that, now it makes total sense, right? When you think about it. Do you read a lot when you were a kid?
I did. I read a lot. I wrote a lot. So I would write poetry. I would write, fake little plays and stories. And kind of just a lot of different experiences that fed me inspirationally, I guess.
Brothers and sisters growing up?
Yeah, I'm the middle of two sisters. Okay. So grew up with a house full of women. So my stepdad definitely had to deal with all of that. Yeah. And then now, ironically, we all have boys. So now we're dealing with all boy issues. And I live with all boys, and they're stinky and hormonal in very different ways. So.
How old are your kids?
I just have one. A 14-year-old boy is going into high school. Okay. So. And even our dog is a boy, so I'm just surrounded.
We're big dog people, so we don't have kids yet, but I do have 2 dogs, so they're just the greatest things to them. And now I picked them up from the groomers this afternoon, and they have got their summer cut. So we have 2 golden doodles, and if anybody knows golden doodles, once they get their summer cut, they're 2 different dogs. So I picked them up. I'm like, what have you done with my dog? It's just like fluffy tail and fluffy ears, and the rest is just kind of very poodle. But
they gotta feel so much better on a hot day like today.
I'm sure they feel great, but aesthetically they look a bit, but we haven't spray painted our dogs like some people, so that's a whole thing which I refuse to do. My dogs are not fashion statements. What dog do you have?
We have a little terrier mix named Kevin McAllister, and he is
from
a rescue
Home Alone?
From Home Alone. Okay. Yeah, so when we got him a few years ago, my son was obsessed with Home Alone.
Brilliant.
And so that's where we got his name. And
those are the best Home Alones, right?
Yes. For sure.
There was a 3 and 4 would not. I think it was.
They just kept making them, and they should have stopped. They should have stopped.
Yeah, definitely. So you go to OU. Was OU kind of the only choice?
Originally, I was looking at Michigan State because I had gone there for an environmental competition actually in high school, and so got introduced to that campus. Also looked down at Texas A&M at Galveston. They have a great marine biology program, and so but ultimately was going to start out at OU and kind of see where it went. And since I ended up changing my major, probably a good decision. I had an older sister that was already there. She was 2 years ahead of me in school, so that helped have some built-in community already. And it was far away. It felt like it was far away from home. It had a little bit of independence, but still that safety net.
So, as you're kind of reading and writing a lot as a hobby, and you're doing environmental science, when does the shift come that you think, you know what, I want to go into this amazing thing called PR and agencies and this wonderful world of, writing and building businesses and brands?
So I kind of fell into it.
Yeah.
So I took that one intro to mass comm class, and then that led to ultimately changing my major and writing and finding journalism. And then really through my internships, I had an uncle that worked for a big PR agency. And so that kind of opened a door to explore something and figure out, is this something that interests me long term? Agency life isn't for everyone. So it's kind of one of those, you try it, and sometimes learning that it's not for you is just as valuable. But I loved the pace. I loved the variety of experience by not being in-house, by being on an agency side. So that's kind of what started it. And then having those internships, going into a full-time job. I graduated in early 2000s. It was a really, hard time as a creative to find a job. A lot of people in my generation really had to seek out bigger markets. We didn't have the agency creative community that we have right now in Oklahoma City. And so that was the other kind of thing. Everybody was leaving to go to Dallas or these other bigger markets and find those creative agency jobs, whether it's advertising, graphic design, whatever. And I love that now that's really changed, and people are intentionally have started agencies and built wonderful brand and advertising agencies here, and the marketing community is just thriving. And so I love that, just still being in that community and having so many wonderful peers.
Yeah, and no doubt helped you when you wanted to come back too.
For sure. And really when I first started, I was very traditional PR. And, social media didn't exist then. Right. I'm dating myself a bit, but agency life was very siloed. So you had advertising agencies, you had web agencies, you had PR agencies, and now it's very integrated. Yeah. And so when I moved back, I took a job in-house, a communications position with the state tourism office. And that's really when I was introduced to integrated marketing and really wearing all the hats and figuring out how to speak with graphic designers and print jobs and ad rates and what's the difference in gross and net, ad buying, all these different things that I really didn't know before because I was so traditionally PR. So that really challenged me in all different kinds of ways. Yeah. And it also introduced me to the tourism community and industry. And, it was fun. It wasn't, as a marketer, you want to, you're selling a product, but you want to believe in it. It makes your job easier and makes your soul happy. And selling the state of Oklahoma was easy because I loved it and I loved exploring it.
Yeah, it's, you're right. It makes it a lot easier, right? When you just this is home. I get, and then you also learn so much more about your home state, right? Kind of the same with me with the podcast, and interviewing people like yourself. I get to learn so much more about the state that I live in now. And there's so many corners of the state that you're like, why have we not been here yet? Go back to your environmental ties and Natural Falls State Park, and obviously Broken Bow area is kind of the new place, and you go to Black Mesa and all those places. We have so much stuff here. It's and all the ecosystems, and we have 7, I think, right, in the state, which is kind of unheard of for most states. Yeah. But yeah, it seems like a perfect place for you, obviously.
It is. I think in being in Oklahoma City, it's an easy drive to experience all those different ecosystems. And so I think that's really something I love about being just in the central part of the state. And, we're so close to go to Wichita Mountains. You can go up to Natural Falls, dig for crystals. I mean, you can do it all in just a couple of hours. And so I love, my family, we love exploring and doing weekend trips and road trips and all that kind of stuff. And really, whether it's a city like Oklahoma City or a small town, there's something really cool and special about all these places and the people. That really make it.
How, other than the size, how is the state tourism board different to what you do at Visit Oklahoma City?
So a couple different ways. So they, when I was there, we had, state parks are part of it, and you have just the leisure marketing side. Film and music was part of it as well. So you're kind of marketing to a couple different types of travelers. At Oklahoma City, we also have sports tourism, so folks that are coming in for Women's College World Series, youth sports, horse shows. We also have meetings and conventions here. That's not something we really did at the state level. It's really more of a city focused. So we're working with meeting planners to bring meetings and conventions here to use our facilities and our hotels and experience the destination. So that was a new side that I hadn't had as much depth in before when I was at the state level. And then we don't have the state park side. So we have city parks and those kinds of things. But so there's definitely overlap from a leisure perspective, but then there's differences too.
Talking about convention center stuff, did we meet at the Omni last year to do the Porsche thing?
Oh, it was people from our team, but it wasn't you and I.
Okay, because I remember someone from visiting Oklahoma City, and I was taking photos. I was working for the dealership at the time, and I can't. It was someone
probably
from the
Katie.
team.
Yeah,
probably. And I just in my head, I'm like, maybe we've met before.
Oh,
no, which has just been announced. So that's coming next year, right?
Yeah,
the
so
huge Porsche
our
parade.
team worked to pull that proposal together
So excited.
and win the business. Yeah, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Are you a car guy?
Oh, such a car.
Okay.
It's. I'm very excited. My goal is to have my own by that point.
Okay.
My own Porsche by July next year, right? Because it was just announced. But yeah, that's going to be incredible. And there is a huge Porsche community in Oklahoma City. So I know there's a lot of people that are excited.
There is. The car community here is really interesting. Both my husband and son are very big car guys, but I participate in the board with Adventure District, and like Cars and Coffee is moving over to now meet up at the parking lots by Remington Park. And just, I love the diversity there that you see and the accessibility of just so many different types of kind of subcultures of the car community. It's really fun.
Yeah, it's very underrated here, and I love being a part of it. I love going to the Saturday shows, and even kind of on a broader scale, there's a friend who's been on the podcast, started last year. He calls it Cruising Oklahoma, and it's the last Sunday of every month in the summer, basically. That we go for a cruise somewhere in Oklahoma, and he sends you the Google coordinates. Everyone meets somewhere in the state, and then we drive for a couple hundred miles, and then you have a destination, and you've got to drive to where you are to get to the starting point. But he's grown it to hundreds of cars. We took a trip from Yukon to Hennessy last year, and and it really helps. You always pick small towns. So we have an economic impact in the small towns, and Hennessy, the town of Hennessy, was so kind of happy with the turnout that they about a month ago they went back for the second year, and they shut all the roads down. They had helicopter rides. They had they had this huge. The entire town was on had this huge activation. So that might be one thing. Your husband's probably heard about it if he's into the local car scene. But yeah, it would just kind of put together the love of tourism in Oklahoma with people wanting to drive cars, and it didn't matter what car you have. Yeah, there's your fancy hundreds of thousands of dollars supercars, but there's also just a family of four in whatever car they're driving going to see part of the state they've never been to.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's all the diversity in it, not just the diversity of cars, but people as well. It's something I'd love to do, and I could talk about it forever. But people have probably heard that on this podcast. So
I find that car guys tend to be able to talk about it for a long time.
Yeah, you're like, you kind of find someone, right? Or you're out at a restaurant, or you're out at a wedding or something, and you find the other car guy, and you're like, okay, I found someone.
Here's my people.
Yeah, here's my people. Oh, brilliant. So you came back, you went to work for the state tourism office from St. Louis. How different then? You mentioned it was kind of totally different to traditional PR that you were doing in St. Louis, kind of learning all the stuff, but also, you mentioned social media, the rise and differences in social media while you're at the state office as well.
Yeah.
And I guess navigating, it's different if you're working for a business that can, probably isn't in the limelight as much, where, if you make a mistake, you can delete a post, bring it down, and no one really sees it. But with the state, everyone kind of sees it, right?
We have a lot of stakeholders we answer to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So how was that experience?
So I came back in 2006. So I have the job of convincing the executive director at the time that Facebook is necessary. Yeah. And, and it was a risk, right? It's people can post whatever they want. They can post a bad experience. How do we manage that in a way that is transparent, but also is moderated somehow, or has some, it felt a little bit like the Wild West. And so, but as a marketer, I knew the potential, even though it wasn't, I wasn't one that had grown up with social media. Mm-hmm. So we very much were figuring it out. And so luckily, he was open-minded, and we, took the leap and started the Travel OK Facebook and Twitter pages, and Foursquare at the time, if anyone remembers Foursquare. I'm really dating myself now. But so those were kind of the first steps. And then, obviously it's evolved from there and grown leaps and bounds since I've been there. But so yeah, I think part of it was just what's tried and true. We still had traditional publications, travel guides, traditional advertising, but then there was also room to evolve, and marketing was certainly having a big digital evolution during that period. But that was different than what I had learned in college, right? So it wasn't, all these mediums didn't exist when I was in college. So now you go to the journalism school at OU, and there, our classes on digital media and production and all these things that just didn't even exist. And so we really just had to learn as we went and figure it out, and figure out the algorithms and the strategy. But ultimately at the core, it's still storytelling. It may sound a little different, formal versus informal, or visuals or whatever, but at the core, there a lot of the same principles apply. And I think when you bring it back to great storytelling and engaging content, like that's ultimately what it's about, no matter what the medium is.
Yeah, and the Oklahoma tourism page on Facebook now has 426,000 followers. So,
I mean, I'd love to take credit for all that, but
it's got to start somewhere.
But it has to start, and it was fun. We were so like innovative in blogging and all of these things that were new at the time, and now it just seems funny to think about that. But we created a blog for the state, and again, just trying to explore all these wonderful stories. There's just no end to the angles and the stories of experiences here. And so no shortage of content for sure.
That's the good thing about it, right? Is that like there's so many, and that's the thing I love about what I do as well. Like I'm never going to run out of guests and stories, and it's the same with you. Just and I think Travel OK did a series. Maybe it's the summer series. I'm trying to find it on YouTube right now. They just did a bunch of like destination road trips around the state, and I saw that. I'm like, this is amazing, and it was very well done. And I'm sure it cost a lot of money, but it's gone somewhere and I haven't seen it since, which is probably a budget thing, because that stuff's not cheap. However, it looked fantastic. And I remember seeing it, I'm like, I would watch this. I need to do more of that. But then the struggle is, okay, who is actually watching it? And is it worth the investment? And it's tough to measure the return on investment with social media, right? Like that's probably the hardest thing for you, to try and convince whoever it is that's talking about your budget that this is worth it and people are watching it.
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword, right? I mean, I think there's an awareness piece that is valuable but hard to measure. I think video is so compelling for us because we can open people's eyes to something unexpected. A lot of people, it's not that we're necessarily coming from this overly negative place. They haven't been here to experience it themselves. And so video helps us say like, oh, look at this cool restaurant, or look at this wonderful park, or whatever the thing is, and really show it to them firsthand, and hopefully break down some of those barriers and misconceptions. So it's really powerful, but the value isn't always measured in likes and impressions, and those are important, and you got to pay attention to what's engaging, but there's value beyond that too.
Yeah. So moving into, I guess, the Visit Oklahoma City side of things, how did the position come up, and what was that process of that, and you thinking, maybe I should go work for Oklahoma City instead of the state?
Yeah, so I worked at State Tourism for 5 years, and it was a really wonderful era. It was, 2007 was our state centennial, so a lot of amazing programming and focus around of that. And as a marketer, just an exciting time to be telling the state story. And I worked a lot with cities throughout the state, and so that's when I really engaged a lot with the Visit OKC team. But then I left the tourism industry and got recruited away by another agency, and so went and did the integrated marketing thing again for about 7.5 years, and then got a call from our Visit OKC president at the time, and he was kind of restructuring some things within our team, and I think looking for that strategic marketing, integrated marketing perspective. And, it's always that, hey, let's go have lunch and catch up. And
how is your job? How are you doing? Are you happy?
Exactly. And he's a guy I respected a lot, and had worked with very closely over those 5 years. And so you, of course, go to lunch and see where it goes from there. So Fast forward, came back in January of 2019 to visit OKC, and a lot like coming home in many ways. You know, I knew the leadership, I knew several department heads. It was a wonderful time to be in Oklahoma City. There's so much going on. And obviously I'd still lived here and kept up with all that was going, even though I hadn't been directly in-house at tourism anymore. But I had a couple clients that were attractions and kind of in this industry still. So it was an easy yes, and haven't looked back since.
Yeah, and then so that was the destination marketing role, or was that a different role?
Yeah, so I was VP of destination marketing, and really building out the team again to be more. We have communication side and a marketing side, but really operate kind of like a little in-house agency. And at the time, we were just about to open Sisters Hill Park and the new convention center and the Omni and the streetcar. All those things were kind of just coming online. And so that was putting us in a whole new peer set when it came to being a convention destination city. And so really looking at our ad campaigns and our brand and saying, okay, we haven't even been on the radar of some of these meeting planners because we couldn't host them before, and now we can. And so how do we get on their radar and really tell Oklahoma City's story in a unified way? And that's what ultimately led to our brand campaign and the Modern Frontier research and all of that we did.
Yeah. Was the Sisters Hill Park opening the Kings of Leon concert? Or was that that was it? It was that.
Yeah, it was fall of 19.
I was flying back from somewhere, and I got back into town at like noon on that day. And I was like, I really should go because Kings of Leon are great. Seen them. Fortunately, been fortunate enough to see them twice. I was like, that'd be amazing. I remember driving. I think I was driving down the highway, and I was like, I should pull over and just get involved. I was like, no, I need to go home, fall asleep, because I've been up for 25 hours. And I instantly regretted it the next day. I was like, I should have gone. But you mentioned the streetcar there as well. That was like such a huge, thing.
Sorry.
Is that me or you? You're good. Such a huge kind of decision, right? Because it's not just this is going to bring people to it. It's like, wow, the infrastructure. And now it's continuing. And all. I mean, that there's so much to go into it, not just writing and talking and telling stories. Like that is a really big decision. So is there anything that stands out from just being involved in that stuff?
Well, I think, for us, it's about, we sell this city and like all the venues in this package, right? So it's not just about the cool venue or the cool hotel or the number of hotel rooms you need, but it's also about connectivity. So we're about, how do we move people around? The streetcar helps us spread that around and get them to different districts, helps us connect to Bricktown. So I think, some of that has been in place for decades, right? I mean, I think it's not a quick thing that you just decide you're going to do and then you build it, right? It was part of a whole map slate and really a visionary set of projects that work together. And we're seeing that now with Maps 4 as well. I mean, there's already the new Coliseum at the fairgrounds, the multi-purpose arena. I mean, these are things that our team is already selling for event planners that are planning events the next 2 to 10 years.
Right.
And I think that's what, locals don't always understand is, yes, these are for quality of life and locals use them, but there's also a whole other set of folks that can use them and benefit from them and bring a ton of money to our city while they're doing it. So it has value for both locals and visitors. Right.
Are you a foodie?
I am, yes.
Yeah, that's one thing. I mean, I always talk about food on this podcast because I can't stop thinking about food. It's great. And we're just how lucky we are to have so many great local restaurateurs, I think it's the right word for it, that want to invest in open businesses, right? And the restaurant groups that are constantly trying new things. You think of, social order dining, is that right? So, yeah. And then you've got, Rachel at 84 Hospitality, and you've got Good Egg Dining Group and multiple others that, we are so spoiled for choice. And when people come to the city, and they say, where should we go eat? I'm like, for the first time, I think, in a long time, I asked, well, what do you like, right?
It's a hard question to answer.
Because then you have some idea. Otherwise, you're just kind of like, well, what price point do you want, or whatever the question is, because we're spoiled for choice. And there's been some great businesses that have opened up with food, and they have great food and they have great drinks and they actually have a great atmosphere, which is very hard to pull off all three, but we are spoiled with it. you get to kind of invite people in here all the time, right? And build packages or build recommendations of where you should go. How much fun is that?
I mean, it's pretty fun.
Yeah.
So I think the interesting thing too, I think not only are we spoiled, but I think we take it for granted a little bit.
I think we do.
Especially post-COVID. I mean, I go to other cities and, the local places didn't survive like ours did. And I think a lot of that's because we were intentional locally about supporting them. And we have a thriving scene here that we want to maintain. So that part's exciting that, we just didn't have all these places shutter over COVID and not come back. And then I think a lot of the chefs challenge each other, right? And I think that creates a culture too that continues to elevate our foodie scene. And then you also have like Chef Andrew Black. He obviously just won the James Beard Award and has all this national attention. But then he's such a gracious ambassador. If we're picking up the phone and saying, "Hey, I have this travel writer in town," or "I have this group of influencers who want to swing by and experience your place," and it's not just, "Hey, I'm going to set them a table." It's, right. I want to meet with them. I want to share my story. I want to share my Oklahoma City experience. And that's the part that makes the difference. And again, it's that connection. It's that willingness to, nobody's probably busier than he is right now, but it doesn't make you feel that way. Yeah. And that's really what I think makes our difference, and it's special, and I see that every single day. And it's just the Oklahoma City way and the Oklahoma way. But I think we definitely take it for granted because we just assume that's how people are, and it's really not. It's special.
Yeah, and you kind of parlay that into, the stay, right? Like, where are you staying? The hotel experience, and, do you want to stay in the middle of downtown? Do you want to stay a little bit further out? Do you want an Airbnb? I'm sure the research days for you guys are like the best days of the week, right? You're like, okay, if we were to come to Oklahoma City for a weekend, what would we do? And you just kind of go research, and I'm sure there's a lot of fun doing that. But at the same time, obviously the National is kind of like the center of everything at the moment, right? Kind of with that being done and how incredible that is, and the restaurants that are around it too. It gets a lot of attention, but for good reason. So I'm sure that's kind of like an easy sell to a lot of people that are coming into town because everything's around them at that point as well. Yeah,
right. I mean, it's all about the details that make the memorable experiences. And but I think it's not. We have a lot of examples of that in downtown Oklahoma City, Bricktown, but we also have Bradford House is another great example where it's not in the central part of downtown, but it is wonderful and has such a uniqueness to it and attention to detail, both food and beverage and as a hotel stay. They do events there. I mean, so many wonderful things. And so I think that's, again, it's all about what do you want to experience? What are you looking for? Do you have kids with you and you want a swimming pool, or is it a date night? It really can run the gamut. Yeah. And but luckily we have all those things and more. I think with our districts too, it's another great slice of Oklahoma City that stands out. Whether you're going to Paseo or Plaza or Adventure District, I mean, all of them have a different experience, different vibe, different personality to it. And so, and just like us, right? Like, we're not always wanting the same thing all the time, and we're going to be in a different mood for something else. And we can go to those districts and have those experiences. And if we're hosting different people, we may take them to different places because of what we know they'll love. So that's the other thing. We're not just one thing, and I love that.
Yeah, I agree. There's so many things that you could do here, and it's just a matter of time to you need the time to do all of them because there is so much. And you go out as far as the river sports stuff that goes as far as Lake Overholzer, and the kayaking and canoeing you've got out there with up into the wildlife area, Stinchcombe wildlife area, and that it's like, or you go and ride bikes, or you mentioned Adventure District, or you go to the zoo. Like, there's, I mean, it helps, when you have all that stuff, because when you're bringing in people, and I know we'll talk about it in a little bit, you bring in people all the time when you host people here, and especially writers and bloggers and influencers, and to draw attention to Oklahoma City. And it's clearly working because the city's been growing and growing and growing. And whether that's you guys working closely with the state chamber and figuring that out, and or the state chamber and the Oklahoma City chamber as well, to bring businesses in. But at the end of the day, if you're bringing businesses in, they got to live here, and they got to love living here. and that's the exciting part for you, is just, you're selling Oklahoma City on, to these people, but when it's as nice as it is and our food's as good as it is and the people are as great as it is, it's not a really hard sell. Right?
It's not.
It's just getting them here.
I mean, that's it. I mean, it doesn't feel like sales at all, right? It's just lifting up the experiences here and the people, and similar to what you do. I mean, so much of it storytelling through the people. We were working on our new ad campaign, and we knew we were using a local crew, all local talent, and we were looking for voiceovers that were more like spoken word performers, singers, and so we weren't looking for like voiceover talent, from an agency perspective. And so we were kind of meeting these different spoken word performers, and we ended up picking 4 that ended up being the voiceover for our commercials. But through getting to know them in that process, it was like, oh my gosh, they individually are such wonderful creative contributors to our city. Like, let's tell their stories. And so then that we kind of went down that rabbit hole and partnered with Prairie Surf Studios and did these little vignette videos on each of the 4 of them and the different organizations they're a part of and what they love about the city. And none of that was planned, it was scripted, and it was so organic and wonderful. But that's the kind of experience that just happens by digging into who we are. And they all had different reasons for why they choose to be here, what they love about the city, the areas they love the city, but they all were very driven by giving back and being ambassadors for this place. And then so I think that pride is just, you can't get that everywhere, and you can't teach it. It has to just be authentic. Yeah. And so it's exciting. It's an exciting time.
Yeah. What's it been like? I mean, so you mentioned before we started recording, you're hosting 36 travel writers soon. So a lot of planning for that. 2 weeks, say a prayer. Yeah, a lot of planning for that, and by bringing them in from all over the country. And what goes into hosting a bunch of travel writers, and why are we doing that?
Yeah, so we just annually we host around 25 to 30 different writers and influencer content creators a year. But this group in particular is called the Society of American Travel Writers. And so we're hosting one of their chapter conferences. And so they come in, they're going to be here for 3 days. And really, it's a big site visit for us to take them to different tours of our attractions. They're staying in a couple of our hotels. We're doing a dine around one night where they got to pick from 3 different restaurants. And so really, it's just a big field trip for them to show off all we have to do. And the outcome is that we hope they'll go back and pitch these as story ideas to all the different national publications that they write for. So we expect a lot of great media coverage to come from it, but really it's also relationship building. We find that when we host these writers, it's not always just like a one-story assignment. A lot of them are freelancers for multiple publications. They can really stretch these experiences into different kinds of stories, which only benefit us, right? To help us tell that story nationally. So it's a ton of work, I will say. My team's been wonderful to just put all the details together, and they can be kind of high maintenance because they're used to being wined and dined and rolling out the red carpet, and so with that comes expectations. But we're up to the challenge, and I think so many of them will either have not been here before or haven't been here in 10 or 15 years. And as we know, so much has changed. So it's going to be an exciting time, I think, just to see their reaction to this place. And hopefully they'll leave really inspired with all the story ideas that they're going to walk away with. Yeah.
Are they kind of all across different age ranges? Are they kind of...
Yeah, they're all, some are late 20s all the way up to 60s. They were kind of retired and became travel writers. Some are photographers. So they're, Nat Geo level photographers. Wow. So really compelling writers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. God, it's going to be awesome. I'm sure, like you said, the team has been hard at work. It's a ton of work, but it'll be totally worth it because of the amount of stories and, feedback and exposure you get from that. Like, it makes so much sense to do that over bringing local people in, because my audience is majority of my audience is like Oklahoma City, Edmond, Tulsa. So it would make zero sense for that investment and you guys to do that for me because I live here, right? But it makes total sense to bring someone in from, Denver or wherever to see Oklahoma City. And Oklahoma City is slowly climbing on the list of places where people want to go for the weekend, but it is not, at the top of the list like a LA, or San Diego, or where, the Vegas or whatever the places that people want to go on stay in the country and go on vacation to. And, I think that's the goal, right? Is to bring people in and bring dollars in, and, by having a new convention center, I'm sure that brings in tons of business, and the size of it, and you got the film studios and the Thunder, and the ballpark, and having the Savannah Bananas come here. Yes. I was in Bricktown when that happened.
That was insane.
Where are all these people coming from? Why are they all in yellow when they open the gates to let everybody out? But all of those things. There's so many. We don't have. There's one thing. If you come here, even if you love golf, right? Like I travel quite a bit, and I play a lot of golf, and you can come here and play great golf courses. Like, there's not many areas where we don't lack. We lack the things that football, soccer, whatever it is, basketball, the Thunder. Like, you can pretty much make someone's weekend, right, by all that. And then the cuisine's great, the music's great, and it's. And
I think that's there's always something that's a draw, right?
Yes.
So whether you're here because your kid has a soccer tournament, but then you have a free evening to figure out where you're going to eat, or you're coming to do whitewater rafting at river sport, there's lots of different reasons people have a draw to come here. And but while they're here, even if it's for a convention, there's usually a few hours of downtime or a window that we can show them something else, get them outside the convention center, even if it's just walking through Sistertail Park, or popping over to Bricktown and doing a water taxi ride. So I think that's where, we usually find the entry point, and then it's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I'm going to bring my family back. And then visitors, can turn into locals, right? Mm-hmm. So you have these stories of folks that I came because of XYZ, but then they ultimately end up moving here. Yeah. So it feeds a lot of different things about our city. There's not just the visitor, the economic impact, but there are longer term implications that benefit us too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, recently, right, you got the softball here, that brings in a lot of people and a lot of exposure for Oklahoma City. And, I'm sure if you probably spoke to one of the softball coaches that's been coming here for the last 10 years, so, they've seen a huge change, and they might even come back, right? And thanks to Coach Gasso, softball is a pretty big deal here.
And even for the women coming to play for the team, the 40 players or whatever that come with each team, this is a moment in time for them that they've been working for their lives. And, literally when the season starts, it's the road to Oklahoma City is how it's marketed. And that, it builds over the whole season. And this is a moment in time they will never forget. So while they're here, even though it's, competition and they're very focused, they are shown around the city. We, give them welcome gifts. It's all about, again, that little detailed touch to make them have a wonderful experience here.
Yeah. Do you have, because you're kind of ears to the ground and eyes are always open for new businesses and activations and stuff like that around the city. Do you have any that right now that are super underrated that some people know about, but not everyone knows about it? And when they do, it's going to be, kind of gangbusters.
Oh gosh. I think, I kind of go back to our districts. They're on a different development spectrum, I think, depending on what area you're talking about. But you have Paseo that the food scene there has really been thriving. And then you have Chisholm Creek, which is still has a ton of stuff to do, but is still adding to it all the time. The Half is another one that we've had some recent cool announcements come out.
A go-kart track.
The Andretti. Yeah. So I think, it's all at various stages. And I don't know that one necessarily comes to mind. You have the Oak, which is the development over by Penn Square Mall, which will be mixed use. And I think that's what's interesting too. It's you're seeing a lot of this mixed use development between residential, food and beverage, a hotel component. So it's not just one thing anymore.
Yeah.
And I think I love that about it too.
Yeah, it's that go-kart track's gonna be great.
It is gonna be great.
Super pumped about that. Well, and also kind of I think we still have the mentality of we're underdogs, we're kind of underrated ourselves, and have a little bit of a chip on our shoulder, and that gives us that mentality of I'm gonna show you. We're gonna go out and do it, and
absolutely.
And come to Oklahoma City and we'll show you what it is that we're made of and how great this place is.
Yeah, and then there's a lot of why not? Why not us? Why not here? And that's definitely in the fabric of who we are. There's a resiliency there. And I think that's what's exciting too about ultimately why I came back to Oklahoma City, right? Like I knew I could, it was big enough to have opportunity, but small enough where I felt like I could really be a difference maker and a change maker. And I think that's still in the fabric of who we are too, and why you're seeing young professionals stick around and grow here, and because they know they can have a seat at the table, and you can't do that everywhere.
Yeah. Other than to what you just said, other than the people, what do you think is Oklahoma City's best asset?
Oh, of course I had to say the people. You took that away from
that's
me.
why I took it away from you, because it's a go-to.
I think I love that we're not just one thing, and I think that's a challenge as a marketer to articulate that, because there's a lot of destinations that are known for one thing, right? You have Austin and Nashville that are kind of music cities. You've got even St. Louis, like the Gateway to the West and the Gateway Arch. Like you have these very obvious one things. For Oklahoma City, we don't have just one thing. Yeah. And so I think it's hard, because how do you concisely articulate like that in a nice, billboard or ad copy? But then the opportunity is we're not pigeonholed into just being one thing. And so I love it, even though it can be hard from a marketing side.
Yeah, you're right. You're like, that's the one thing they teach you in marketing, right? It's like, what is your identity?
Yes.
Like go for that and start there and double down on that. And that's all you sell that. But it also makes things super interesting, and every day is different for you guys, which is, I don't think you'll ever get tired of coming to work every day and see, there's a new restaurant's opened up, or here's a new hotel or coffee shop. I mean, I love going to Bradford House. Like, their bakery is incredible.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
And also just down the street from here, Harvey Bakery is just dangerously close to the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. But they do have a really good chicken salad sandwich.
Every time I go to Harvey, it's like, it's a weird time. It'll be like 2:00 in the afternoon. Yeah. I'm like, it's not meal time. Like it won't be busy. And then I go and I'm like, it's packed.
It's stacked
all the time.
All the time. Yeah, you're right. All right, two more things. So it's 4th of July weekend.
It is.
What is Oklahoma City doing for 4th of July weekend?
So we have the Stars and Stripes Festival on the river, which will be really fun. Lots of different paddle sport activities, fireworks. You have Red, White, and Boom at Scissortail Park with the Philharmonic will play. There'll be fireworks. On 4th of July, OKC Dodgers have a home game. They'll also have fireworks. So I'm a big firework fan, as you can tell. I feel like that's very, America. So yeah, I think, again, no shortage of things to do. If you aren't sure where to look, we have a July 4th page on Visit OKC's website, visitokc.com. And package it all up there for you.
And then last question, what does the modern frontier mean to you?
So the modern frontier, I think we embody it because we are resilient, we're innovative, and we're collaborative. And I think those are character qualities both of Oklahoma City, but also of myself that I can relate to. And I think there's a lot of just depth to that. And, obviously we went through a lot of research and brand exercises and all of that. But I think ultimately the modern frontier kind of captures both our rich history, but also the opportunity that lies ahead.
Yeah. Amazing. Lindsay, thank you so much for spending 45 minutes with us, sharing your story, telling us all about Visit Oklahoma City. For people listening, go to visitokc.com, and on the homepage, you will see everything you need to know. Literally a tab for things to do, events, restaurants, places to stay, and then we have About Oklahoma City, Outdoor Recreation this month in Oklahoma City, which is my favorite tab. Local restaurants, second favorite, very close favorite. And then, you got family fun and summer guide. And that's just like everything you need is right there. And you scroll down, you can see it all. But, it's such a huge help and so clean, and just go there and boom, what's in Oklahoma City this month, right? And okay, yeah, let's go to this, let's go to that. And it's a huge help. I really appreciate the work that you guys do. I know the team's been super hard at work, ready to host these 36 riders that are coming in from all over the country. And, I don't doubt that Oklahoma City is going to wow them. The food, like you mentioned, they're going to eat great food, go to great activations. They're going to get some killer sunsets out there. They might even get a storm. Who knows? And they're going to have a great night's sleep somewhere in one of our awesome hotels. So appreciate you, appreciate the team and all the hard work you do for bringing people into Oklahoma City and growing this city, because with more people it brings more outside businesses and more dollars. And, a lot of people don't like change, but if it's change in the good, and it brings dollars and people spending money, and that means that local businesses can also open a new business or whatever it is. So it benefits everybody. I really appreciate you coming down. And for people listening, we'll catch you next episode. Cheers. Hope you guys enjoyed that great episode. Thank you so much for listening. As always, huge shout out to our sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, sharing Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at OklahomaHOF. Our other sponsor, the Chickasaw Nation, amazing sponsor. They do amazing things for the state, and they're always sponsoring something in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and without their support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. This episode is presented by the Choctaw Nation. The Choctaw people have a rich history and a bright future. At the Choctaw Cultural Center, you can take part in a story 14,000 years in the making. Stroll through our immersive exhibits portraying Choctaw life from the moment our ancestors emerged from the Nani Weha in Mississippian homelands to the Trail of Tears, where we lost so many loved ones, and finally to the modern-day tribe making a positive impact on local communities throughout southeastern Oklahoma. Try your hand at our social dancing and stickball and learn more about our vibrant culture through demonstrations, workshops, and classes. The kids will have a blast in our Luxie Activity Center. The Choctaw Cultural Center is more than a museum. It's a living, breathing experience. Visit ChoctawCulturalCenter.com to plan your visit.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.